This is how the lens you're using can change your face while recording the video. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Dom from Wondershare UniConverter, and in this video I'll tell you all the basics you need to know about lenses. When it comes to choosing a camera equipment, what most people will put more money at is the camera body itself. While it's important to have good recording capabilities, it's even more important what the camera is going to see through: the lens. The lens is the heart of the camera, and it will very much define the look of the video your hyper super camera will produce. So what kind of lens should you buy for vlogs, talking head videos, or if you want to shoot cinematic b-rolls? Well, let's find out together. The very first aspect of lenses we're going to cover in this video is the focal length. The focal length is not an actual measurement of the length of the lens itself, more like an optical calculation that for us is not important for the basics. What is important, however, is that the focal length will define the angle of view and the magnification factor. The lower the number is, the wider shot we get, and the smaller everything will appear. Naturally, the higher the number is, the opposite will happen. And the most common lenses are due to their functions. People usually go for a wide lens, for example an 18mm one. They go for a 35, which is one of the favorites of filmmakers, and the angle of view of a 35mm lens is supposed to be the closest to how a human eye sees. And of course a talent lens, which is starting from about 75mm. Next up is aperture. This factor tells you how fast the lens is, how much light it lets into the sensor. It basically works the same way as the pupils in the human eyes. The more open it is, the better the camera will see in low light, for example, and it has to get very small to see something in bright sunshine. The aperture is defined in T and f stops. These stops are usually used on professional lenses like cine lenses, and they use f stops on most commercial lenses. The lower the number is, the more shallow the depth of field will become. A shallow depth of field will make the image look more cinematic, and it also separates the subject from the background. It's a really nice effect to have. Now, the more open you go, the harder it will be to keep what's important sharp. For example, this lens that I'm using can go as low as f/0.95. So first of all, if I go wide open, it will be really hard to set the focus even if it's a wide shot. But if I go very close to the subject, well, first of all, I get a very nice and smooth image, but you tell me where the focus is. Obviously, autofocus can help a lot, that is if your camera has good autofocus capabilities and the lens also has it. This is where commercial camera equipment starts getting really pricey. There are lenses that are analog and ones that are digital. An analog lens won't have in-lens image stabilization, won't be able to use autofocus, and the aperture will also be possible to set on the lens itself. For example, cine lenses will always be completely manual. That's because everything is set up and controlled manually when it comes to shooting a movie. As you can see here on these analog and cine lenses, these are cine lenses, we have the T-stops and the focus ring. And you can't use autofocus with these lenses. However, on these digital ones, we only have the focus rings. The aperture can be only set digitally through the camera. Either way, it's up to you to decide what you need, but I'll give you my tips at the end of the video for choosing a camera lens if you have a hard time making a decision. Now, another evergreen question is found between zoom and prime lenses. A zoom lens can be really practical with the amount of focal length it can cover, therefore they are good lenses for beginners. This zoom lens is a 14 to 140mm, for example, making it very universal. It's very useful in situations where you can't plan everything ahead or you can't take multiple lenses with you. A disadvantage of zoom lenses though is that most of them can't keep a constant aperture, so you can't actually use all focal lengths that it can cover the exact same way. Prime lenses serve less purpose in this regard, but they serve their own the best. I think they're a better choice if you have the time to change lenses or know in advance what you will want to do and how, so maybe you only need one prime lens. Of course, there are professional zoom lenses as well that have constant aperture and produce really high image quality. But let me tell you one thing, they're really expensive. So what lens should you get? Well, first of all, you have to decide what you need it for. If you want to start out in videography and then you want to take that to a professional level, you can begin with a 35mm one, because like I mentioned before, that's the closest to how the human eye sees, and the 35mm lens can be used for a lot of tasks. It's wide enough to shoot indoors scenes, but it's also perfect for portraits or for close-ups. Now note that the look of a 35mm also depends on the sensor size. It's a bit more complicated topic, but in a nutshell, different sensors have different crop factors. So make sure to look that up, because the lens, for example, that I'm filming this video with is a 35mm equivalent with its 17.5mm focal length. And I'm using it on a Panasonic G7 camera that has a micro four thirds sensor. And if it was a 35mm lens on this camera, the image would look like this. For YouTube videos, for example, it's good to go with a wide lens, like 18mm for example, and one that is also fast enough to give you a nice bokeh. And for YouTube videos, it's also really good if your camera has good autofocus, and so does the lens. With the same money, of course, you can also get a zoom lens that is universal, but the image quality won't be the same as if you had a prime lens. So yeah, in my opinion, one really good prime lens is better than a zoom lens for the same money. If you're just a hobby photographer and you want to make videos as a hobby, I would recommend that you go with either the kit lens that they give you for your camera, if they give you one, or you buy a kit lens, a simple zoom lens, because it will be very universal and you will be able to use it in a lot of situations for a lot of purposes. When you're done capturing your footage, you can use a UniConverter to process it. From trimming to cropping to compressing, converting it to thousands of different formats to burning it on a DVD, you can utilize the UniConverter in so many ways. There are links in the description so you can check them out if you're interested. But that's all for today. If you found these tips on lens basics helpful, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.